So in our discussion, we want to now continue with revisions of the 2023 question. We are looking at question number 4 that came in this exam. So it says figure 3 shows an example of an ecosystem. So this is an example of an ecosystem. There are plants, there's land, there's carnivorous fish, there's a small fish, water, the sunlight, and of course all that you are able to see. Then the question says identify 2 non-living parts of the ecosystem in figure 3. So they want you to identify 9 living. Now of course, when we talk about non-living parts, if it's an ecosystem, those are what we call as being abiotic factors in the environment. So we mean non-living things in the environment. But of course, there are those that are living. Those are what you call as being biotic factors. So you need to, remember at least these 2 words, because they'll ask you to give. Abiotic means non-living things that are found in the environment. But biotic means living things found in the environment. So now what are the 2 things from what they have given you in this ecosystem that you can say are actually non-living? Of course, there are a lot of things. One, you can simply talk about sunlight. Yeah, sunlight or light is actually non-living. Then the other thing that we can simply talk about is water. If you wanted, you would have also put up another one, what we are calling as being land, because it says from the figure that they have given you. So these are simply examples of non-living, things that are found in this ecosystem, and therefore we call them as being abiotic factors. Then B says, from the features of the ecosystem in figure 3, name the type of ecosystem. So you can see just from the features that you are able to see, it's like water is actually, congested at some point. So you can simply call it as being a pond, ecosystem. So this could actually be a pond ecosystem, but of course likely it might have actually been maybe a river, so you can call it as being a river ecosystem. If it was a lake, you might have actually called as being a lake ecosystem. I hope we are together. Yeah, of course, because there's water, others may actually call it as being an aquatic ecosystem. That is also very much okay when you state it in the exam. Then C says, explain the role played by the following in the ecosystem in figure 3. So what do the small fish do there? What do they basically do? Well, when it comes to the small fish, they can do a lot of things. One, they can actually serve as food for the bigger fish, especially these ones that they have told us as being carnivorous fish. It will feed on these small fish that are there. So that is what you need to remember. So one, I can simply say, possibly I could have said serve as, food for carnivorous. Yeah, carnivorous fish. So they can actually serve as food where they are actually eaten. Then 2, remember these are going to be feeding on small plants. So there are small plants that are found under water, which we call planktons. So the small fish can actually be feeding on those small plants we are calling as being plankton. So that is what we can actually say. So we can simply say the role, we can simply say they feed on planktons. So we call them, so they feed on planktons. So those are simply the small plants that are found underwater. Then 3, what you could have stated, the role of this one is that the small fish are also going to be releasing CO2, carbon dioxide to the plants, so that the plants can actually be supplied with the carbon dioxide needed for photosynthesis. So you could have also said release CO2 in the exam. Write that completely. Release CO2 needed by the plants for photosynthesis. So that is what they do. So you could have talked about that. What about the carnivores? What do they do? One, we can actually start again. They also do the same. They release carbon dioxide, actually needed, by, the plants for photosynthesis. So they also do the same because they're able to generate or to release carbon dioxide. And that carbon dioxide is what the plants are going to be using in the process of photosynthesis. Then apart from that, we can simply say that they regulate. So if you want, you can say they regulate the number of small fish. So they also help to regulate the number of small fish in the sense that the carnivorous fish are simply going to be feeding on those small fish that are there. So that is what you could have actually talked about. Then D says, how does the sunlight in figure 3 affect the distribution? So it says how it affects the distribution of plants in the ecosystem. So how does sunlight affect the distribution of light in the ecosystem? Well, in so many ways that we can talk about. So for example, the plants that are closer to the surface, it simply means they will receive more sunlight, and hence the population of the plants on the surface of the water increase. But at the bottom there, because sunlight is blocked, it cannot completely penetrate, meaning those plants that are underneath, beneath the water, the population is actually going to reduce. So therefore you can say that there will be more plants on the surface of the water than deep under the water, than deep under the water. And the reason is very simple, due to less light reaching the bottom. So due to less light that is actually reaching the bottom. So this is what you could have talked about, and they would have actually given you the marks there. Let's move on to another one that we have. This is the last question that you're going to be encountering, genetics. Watch out for my other videos. You can simply watch out for genetics questions, and they'll help you to quickly revise. So it was saying define the following terms in genetics. So what is an allele? So what is a recessive allele? So it simply talks about a recessive allele. So a recessive allele is an allele, so you can say is an allele that is overshadowed in the phenotype due to the presence of a dominant allele. So that's what we mean. So an allele that is overshadowed. So if you want, you can say an allele that is overshadowed in the phenotype and just end there. It's okay. But why it is overshadowed or covered, masked, it's because of the presence of a dominant allele. And that's the reason that you needed to give. What about phenotype? Well, phenotype is the physical appearance. You can simply say the physical appearance of an organism. So that is what we call phenotype, the phenotype. So phenotype has to do, when you talk about phenotype, basically phenotype has to do with something that you are able to see physical, something that is actually observable, that you are able to to actually see of an organism. So the physical appearance of an organism for a particular trait or characteristic that we have. So the physical appearance of an organism for a particular, if you want, you could have said for a particular trait. That's what we mean, or characteristic, and that's what we call as being the phenotype. Pheno, the geno has to do with the genetic composition of an organism for a particular trait. Now look at this one. They want you to write a genetic diagram. It says Jane has blood group O and as a child of blood group O B. She accuses John of blood group AB to be the father of the child. So Jane has a blood group O and the child in blood group B. Then she accuses John, who is in blood group O AB, to be the father of the child. Then it says with the help of a genetic diagram, determine the possible offspring to conclude whether or not John could be the father, and that's what we are going to do. So when you're writing a full genetic diagram, you need to actually take note of some few things. So you are going to write what we call as being the P1, the first parental generation. You start with what we call as being the phenotype, the physical appearance. For example, you have got the father who is male, crossing with the mother who is actually female. Or if you want, you'd have said Jane, and there you could have actually said John. So there's a cross that is there. Now the next thing that you need to go when you're writing a genetic diagram is the genotype. What is inside of the genes? So remember, John is in blood group AB. That's what we mean. So you can just write, in this case, if you want AB, sometimes you can just write AB. This is what is found in the genes. Then Jane is simply in group O, so it will be OO. If you want, you could have been using, I want just to show you on top there, allele A, allele B, or allele O and allele O. There's no problem even if you use that. That is basically the same, or you can just use the capital letters there directly. There's no problem there. Then the next thing that is going to happen is that in the parental, there are going to be parental gametes now that are going to be produced. When a process called meiosis takes place, a reduction, division. So these are going to separate. So you are going to have A, I love to circle them, and B to show that they have separated. So there's O, again there's actually O. Then of course from there, there's going to be a random combination assortment of the gametes. So the first one will pair with, the first one that side. Again, this same one will pair with the last one. So careful how you cross them. I come to this one will pair with the first one, and again this will pair with the last one. But put them at an angle. Yeah, draw as if you are writing the exam for the last time, not as if you want to, go back. So now you are going to have now what we call the first F1, the first filial generation. So what you see in the children, first of all, is simply the genotype. What is inside of the gene? So you follow them, A, O. By the way, you cannot write OA because both allele A and allele B are dominant. So that's what you need to remember, are dominant to allele O. That's why you cannot start with O. You always start with either A or B. So therefore it will be AO, and there again it will be AO. Then here it will be BO. Again it is going to be BO. So you can see what is happening in this case, that what is the interpretation of the genotype. So this is shown by the what is the interpretation of the genotype? It is shown by the phenotype. This person is simply in blood group what? If you look at the phenotype, blood group A, this one also A, this one B, and that one is B. So is it possible that they can have a child? John and Jane, can they have a child who is in blood group O? The answer is no. So from the genetic diagram, we can therefore conclude that, John is... So when you look at it, let's go back again to the question. It says, Jane has blood group O and a child of blood group B. So you can see here, it's possible that they can have a child who is in blood group O, who is in blood group B. So John is the father. So just like she said, so John is the father. So it doesn't mean you have to explain. You need to use a genetic diagram so that you are able to explain that. Hopefully you got the sense. Please watch out for my other videos, even paper 1, so that you can prepare yourself as you go to write the exams. Thank you so much for